Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the March Enterprise Risk Management Toolbox webinar. Very pleased to have you. A couple of housekeeping notes before we get started. If you've dialed in by phone but haven't logged in by computer and you'd like to see the slides for today's webinar, please point your web browser to readytalk.com. In the box where it says Participant Join a Meeting, enter the same access code that you used for the call, 9879821. On the next screen, just scroll down to the bottom of the invitation, enter your name and email address, and click the button to register, and you'll be put into the webinar. Please do stay aware of the level of background noise in your area, and if it becomes noisy, please put your phone on mute. If you don't have a mute function, you can use the ReadyTalk controls, which are *6 to mute and *7 to unmute. If you're called away from the phone, please don't put it on hold because that will transmit your hold music to everybody else. You can just hang up, dial back in, and it won't disrupt the webinar. We're leaving the phone lines open, so if you have any questions, you can ask them that way. Also, I'll be keeping an eye on the chat box, and if you have any questions, feel free to type them there. I will relay them to our presenter at an appropriate moment. Our presenter today is Trish Drew, who is the Willis Account Executive for the UC Construction Program. She's been actively involved in construction and risk management in the insurance industry for over 30 years. She worked for 3 years in the risk management department of a large general contractor managing their rolling CCIP program. She's been involved with a variety of construction-related risks, including residential developers, large subcontractors, truss manufacturing, and general contractor clients. She has experience in guaranteed cost and large loss-sensitive programs, contract review, and acts as a risk management resource for clients. She also develops and presents educational sessions to clients on risk transfer, contractual liability, and indemnification as it relates to construction contracts and insurance policies. And today, she is kindly presenting our toolbox. Trish?
Thank you, Emily. Thank you for that introduction. And good morning to everyone who's joining us today, and thank you very much for taking time out of your day. For those of you who don't know, Willis Insurance Services is the new broker for the construction insurance programs for UC as of January 1st, 2015. Some of you may know that Risk Services went out for an RFP to replace the existing broker, and that transition occurred on January 1st. I had been involved with the UC construction program for about a year now and moved over from the prior broker with the transition effective January 1st. So very glad to be working with everyone and to be talking with you today. So let's go ahead and get started. So today's discussion is going to provide an overview of some of the risks and exposures and the insurance programs for construction projects that occur at all of the campuses and med centers throughout the UC system. Risk Services has been involved in these exposures and the claims that occur and the coverage issues and had for many, many years and has worked with their broker partners to create insurance programs that are designed to help cover some of these exposures. So in today's webinar, we'll review some of the risks and exposures that arise from construction projects. Some of these are very unique exposures, and then how some of these exposures interact with the campuses. We'll go through and review some examples of claims that can occur and how those claims interact and involve the various policies that UC procures in the construction insurance programs, as well as how that interacts with some of the other insurance programs that Risk Services has. I will also spend some time talking about these insurance programs and giving you kind of a high-level overview of how the insurance programs work and how they are one of the risk management tools that's available to UC. And then we'll talk a little bit about the programs that are in place today and then some of the things that we'd like to look to in the future programs as we continue to develop them for the university. And then I'll also touch on one of the unique benefits that we have with these construction insurance programs, which is our risk control specialists that work on behalf of UC that go out and monitor the activities and the exposures on the construction sites and relay that information back. So when we're talking about some of the risks and exposures that occur, the construction projects in and of themselves have their own unique risks and exposures. And one of the important aspects of managing that risk is hiring a general contractor to perform that work and then transferring the risks that are relative to the construction work to those contractors because they are the ones that are best suited to manage the risks and control them. We do pay careful attention to things such as providing separation of the project site from the students, faculty, and the public. And the facilities, obviously, facilities management gets particularly involved to make sure that we have that coordination and separation and protection of these sites. In spite of all those efforts, there is always a possibility that the university is exposed vicariously for these events that occur on the campuses just by virtue of the fact that they occur on the campus. So regardless of the risk transfer methods that we use to try to transfer these risks onto the contractors, unfortunately the campus can always be involved in a lawsuit and named just because an incident or an accident occurs on the campus. So some of the projects that we have currently active in our programs are in areas that have very high student or public traffic. That would be both foot traffic and vehicular traffic. Some of them are in very congested areas or tight footprints where the project site itself is in very close proximity to other buildings, other student areas, public streets, and sidewalks. And all of these construction projects require some sort of ingress and egress, not only for the workers on the site, but also for delivery of materials, for storage of materials, for staging of the work. And so the construction site sometimes is impacted by this congestion, and it can be difficult to get materials in and out of the site. Sometimes that will require special coordination and scheduling, not just with the campus, but also with local municipalities to limit the impact on traffic and or local businesses. One of the most efficient means of moving materials on a construction site is the use of cranes. But there are also an exposure that requires special consideration because there are definitely added hazards that are involved when they are using cranes on a site. Crane use is very heavily regulated, and OSHA has very strict policies regarding the operation, use, maintenance of cranes. But it's another area that the campuses and UC are subjected to that vicarious liability again, where while the contractor is responsible for the erection, use, dismantling of the cranes, if there is a serious incident or accident, of course, the campus could still have vicarious liability. And it's always an issue, the public relations issue, because any large profile incident or accident obviously usually hits the media. One of the important things about these construction sites is keeping the perimeter fenced and locked, not just for keeping out the public, but also for protection of the building and the tools and the equipment during the construction activities from things such as fire, vandalism, theft. The construction site can also be considered an attractive nuisance. And so it's very important that there be good fencing around it, that the site be lit at night, that would deter any would-be intruders, particularly where you have unique structures or vertical construction going on. Another very important part of the protection is the campus patrols. They are patrolling those sites periodically and making sure that there aren't any unusual activities going on once the work is commenced at night. And in some cases, we have certain policies that will require 24-hour security and or continuously monitored cameras in addition to campus patrols. in some projects which involve renovation of some or all of an existing facility, these can present additional, excuse me, these can present some additional challenges with protecting that site and both the workspace inside and outside from things such as environmental hazards or ensuing traffic areas. Labs and hospitals environments present particular challenges in that regard. Another area that's important is the coordination and scheduling of projects that need to be coordinated and scheduled around campus schedules, other construction and renovation projects that may be occurring in the area, maintenance work that's critical. Those items all have to be taken into consideration. Construction schedules and the sequencing of the work is usually very tight, and there's not a lot of room for allowance, so for events that might stop or interfere the work. So it's very important that the coordination and scheduling be considered. Some other areas that are a challenge for construction projects are the continual give and take between the design and the cost of building the structures, and some of these can even have an impact on the facility's maintenance and management. For example, if during the course of designing or building a structure for aesthetic purposes and to reduce the cost, there's a decision made to shorten a parapet, but that creates an ergonomic issue for maintenance workers when the building is completed. And one of the biggest issues that we consider for the work that's being performed is once it is completed, the contractor has responsibility for any latent defects. Those are the defects which may not be readily apparent with a project or with the work, and the contractor is responsible for those latent defects for a period of 10 years following the completion of the project. So, for example, if there is a problem with installation of piping in a wall and it doesn't present itself until 5 years after the project is complete, the contractor is responsible for that. And if it was due to their negligent installation, they'll be responsible for anything like that through a period of 10 years following completion. And this is one of the reasons that the University-Controlled Insurance Program, the UCIT program, has been put into place because it provides that protection for that 10-year period. And I touched a little bit on vicarious liability, and again, I bring this up because there's a number of areas where the university or the campuses are exposed. Injury or damage that occurs to others, injury to construction workers on the site. While the university transfers this risk contractually to the contractor who is responsible, there is nothing that prevents a third party from filing a civil lawsuit, and that's where this vicarious liability exposure exists for the system. So this is, again, another reason that the insurance programs are an important part of the construction work that goes on at the campuses. And with that, there's the exposure or the potential for reputational risk. Any large incident or accident that occurs is going to garner media attention. It can create issues for the university, and so we want to make sure that we've got good protections in place for that. Some examples of claims that occur in this area, for example, if you have a construction worker who is injured on site and he sustains a fairly serious injury, he is entitled to workers' compensation benefits from his employer. He does get those benefits. However, in some cases, in a very, very serious injury, those benefits may not be enough to sustain him and his family over the course of a lifetime. If you take into consideration maybe somebody who's injured, at 23 years old and he's got, a wife and 2 kids, he may not be able to sustain them throughout their lives just based on his workers' compensation settlement. And so many times in those situations, they will file a third-party civil lawsuit, called third-party action over claims, where they will sue not only the contractor that is controlling the site, but they'll also sue the owner, which in this case is the university. So those claims can be very expensive when they occur. Members of the public who are injured, again, there is nothing that prevents them from also suing the university in addition to the contractor who actually is responsible for the damage or injury. We also have damage to the facilities that can occur during construction. For example, a grading and excavation in a site may damage a utility line and cause some damage either to adjacent properties or also to the work site itself. And then we talked a little bit about the after construction. That's that latent defect exposure that occurs that can continue for a period of 10 years. There's also some unique challenges with making sure that the transition and coordination of these projects from the construction phase to the permanent property program are handled appropriately. Renovation projects can be particularly challenging since the existing structure is insured under the university's property program, but the work that's being put in place, the renovation work, is insured under the builder's risk. There are There are currently 2 major programs that we have for the University for Construction Insurance. The first is the Master Builder's Risk Program, and then we have the UCIT program, which stands for University Controlled Insurance Program. It's a rolling wrap-up program that insures all the parties on the site, and I'll get into that a little further when we talk a little bit about it. One of the challenges that we've had in the transition is to work with all the campuses and determine where we might make changes in these programs for the future. Certainly the business world is dynamic, the construction world is dynamic, and so we need to continually be looking at how we can better the programs and make changes for the future for the insurance programs. First, I'll talk about the Master Builder's Risk Program. This program has been in existence since about 1989, and it has seen many iterations. This coverage is designed to provide first-party coverage for the damage to the project while it's being built. So during the course of building a structure, both the university and the contractors that are on site have a financial risk if that structure gets damaged during construction and the work that was put into place has to be redone. So this program provides coverage for that exposure. Damage can occur from fire, theft of materials, vandalism to the site, storm damage. So if a fire damages a portion of the building while it's being constructed, the Builder's Risk Program will pay for that damage with the idea that it will pay the cost to bring the building back to the point that it was at before the loss occurred. So this program is utilized currently for all projects over $200,000 in contract value. The program has limits up to $150 million in contract value. So it covers everything from small renovation projects, maintenance, repairs, and up to the largest projects like, brand new structures, hospital stadiums, any projects that are over $150 million are usually written on their own separate policy as opposed to being included in the master program. The master builder's risk does not include coverage for earthquake, flood, or delay in completion. In certain circumstances where those risks need to be covered on a specific project, we just look to purchase them separately, and we'll look to go out into the insurance market and procure a separate policy for that project. The UCIT program covers the construction liability for all projects that are over $25 million in contract value throughout the UC system. This program is designed to cover the UC, all the contractors that are working on site, both during the period of construction as well as that period of latent defect that I mentioned before. So while transferring the exposure and the risk to the contractor through the contract is a very prudent risk management tool, the other half of that equation is making sure that you have funding for that risk transfer. And this is the principal attribute of having this UCIT program. On the left side of the screen, the box labeled traditional insurance program shows us that in a traditional contract, the general contractor and each of the subcontractors that they hire have their own insurance policies. And conceivably, again, through the contractual requirements, each of these policies meets those requirements that set out in the contract. This condition is rife with problems because as business goes on and as life goes on, we find that contractors' policies get canceled or replaced, that the policy doesn't provide as broad of coverage as we had anticipated. The limits that they provide are not sufficient. There's a whole list of issues that come up. And so, and most importantly, in the event of a claim, each of those contractors that's involved in the loss and their insurance companies are coming to the table to participate in a claim. And it makes for a very difficult, protracted process in managing a claim and doesn't usually result in a good final resolution. On the right-hand side is the box labeled UCIP, shows us kind of the diagram of setting up what we call a rolling wrap-up program. So in this UCIP program, UC takes the initiative by including this project, anything over $25 million, in the program, and then including all the parties as insureds under one policy. So our program has a very financially strong carrier, which is Zurich Insurance. They're the largest insurer of construction in the United States. And then in addition to that, there's another $100 million of liability limits above that, which really provides broad protection and sufficient limits to protect UC as well as the contractors that are involved in the project. So again, that whole vicarious liability that the campus or UC assumes by virtue of being the owner of the property and the project and potentially being called into any litigation, this provides much broader protection. And it also provides a much more efficient means of managing claims if they do occur, because we now have just one insurance company representing all parties as opposed to 10 to 12 different insurance companies trying to settle out a claim. I mentioned at the beginning that one of the unique opportunities that we have with this program is two dedicated risk control consultants who visit all of the UCIP projects on a weekly basis. Craig Hudson is our representative down in Southern California, and Steve Hooper is our representative in Northern California. So their primary focus is to oversee the safety programs, the implementation of those programs throughout the contractor workforce. They are there to supplement and enhance safety, not so much as an enforcer, but to educate the contractors on best practices for safety and risk control, and be an added set of eyes and ears to the project teams that are out on those project sites. Steve and Craig report back up through the general contractor, who is the responsible controlling party on the project, and also to the subcontractors that are involved, as well as the project teams on their observations of what's occurring on the site. Again, this speaks to that vicarious liability because there's an added dynamic of them looking at these projects and helping improve the risk control and the safety on there that all the parties are exposed to. And really their work is vital to this program and the overall long-term performance of it. During their visits, they may encounter issues where they see a risk that is posing a problem to an adjacent property, or perhaps outside of the project site that might pose an issue to students or faculty or the public, and they will raise those issues up through appropriate campus personnel to make sure that they are addressed. And then one of the other things that Steve and Craig do that is, again, vitally important to this program is the accident investigation process and their root cause analysis of any on-site injuries or accidents. They are both well-trained in root cause analysis, and it's important that they do this procedure when investigating these losses to make sure that their analysis gets down to finding out what caused the loss so that they can eliminate the hazard and provide better protection for either the site for like things like slip and fall hazards or worker safety. It's very important and critical function, and it's one of the things that makes this a very effective risk control program throughout the system. So in closing, there is a very large team of insurance and risk management professionals with Willis that all have construction expertise. And UC has tasked us with managing these insurance programs and bringing that expertise to the table. We welcome any feedback, questions, and we appreciate the opportunity to make the next generation of programs for UC construction the most effective that we can at managing risk.
Thank you very much, Trish. If anybody has any questions, the phone lines are open. And if there are no questions, I guess we'll wrap this up. If you do think of any questions, please feel free to email erm@ucop.edu, and we will relay them to Trish for answering. Thanks very much, and we hope to see you for next month's ERM Toolbox webinar.